Now it's off. I thought I turned it off, but apparently I turned it on. Can we do a quick mic check and we're gonna have to be really cautious of hello sharing tonight, so.
We've got one here, so we should be in good shape.
We're good. Oh. Mm-hmm.
6 excluding Rachel.
All right. It is 7 o'clock, so I'm gonna call this meeting to order. We have a joint township board and planning commission meeting tonight on December 13th. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call when ready.
Here.
Steelman,
Here.
Keaton,
Here.
Jacobson,
Here.
Robel,
Here.
DeYoung,
Here.
Wilksema,
Here.
Pop,
Here.
Goss, here, Bennett,
Here.
Glenn,
Here.
Velmuth.
Here. Thank you. So, does anybody want to set or adjust the meeting agenda tonight? Any requests or changes? Looking
Move
around.
to accept agenda as written.
Thank you. Declaration of conflict of interest pertinent to this agenda item.
None.
Thank you. All right, we'll open it up for public comment. We'll start on Zoom since nobody's in town hall but Randy here tonight with us. So a person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the PC. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following rules and procedures. Comments shall be directed to the PC with questions directed to the chair. Any person wishing to address the PC shall speak from Zoom and state your name and address. Persons may address the PC on matters that are relevant to township planning and zoning issues. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once in the same matter, excluding the time needed to answer a PC member's questions. Public comment shall be limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have anybody with their hand up? Going once, going twice. Moving on. All right, so for tonight, we have all kinds of fun stuff on our agenda. And I just wanted to first say thank you all for coming. I know it's the holiday season and busy, but I'm really glad we were able to get together and have this meeting finally. So the first up is, do you want to start the PowerPoint and do the mass? Are we going to put that up there? And okay, yeah, let's do that. I think that, no, go ahead. I'm going to hand it over to Randy, our master of the master plan.
Look how much different mine displays than yours.
Lights off, or can you get out?
Be better with them.
This is rare. Mine's normally like that. Same, Lenovo.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
This page by page already.
Not the entire packet. We'll save you.
Okay. So what we wanted to do here is just go over where we've been in the last year, actually, in terms of the master plan and also in terms of the zoning ordinance, which is the second item on the agenda. We're going to talk about what's been done and what our next steps, both in terms of the master plan update as well as the zoning ordinance. So just a couple of introductory comments. This is all in your packet, so you may have already seen this, but
our existing master plan is nearly 10 years old. It was completed in 2015. As we've discussed several times, it does fall short of many Michigan Planning Enabling Act requirements that we hope to correct. Our work really began in late 2022 with some meetings of the Planning Commission and discussing our approach in more detail. And then since then, of course, we have some new Planning Commission members and a new chairperson as of January 2023. The Planning Commission appointed a resident outreach subcommittee to advise the Planning Commission on how best to go about the community engagement portion of the master plan. One of the difficulties that planning commissions often have is that they don't control their agenda exclusively. You can have site plans, special use permits, things coming forward that demand the attention of the Planning Commission. And therefore, you don't control necessarily your ability to move a long-term project on. So part of the thinking behind the resident outreach subcommittee was to assign some of the responsibilities of community engagement to that group to help advise both in terms of the community survey as well as the workshop and open house that were held. So ultimately, what came out of that was a 3-phase community outreach effort: the survey, the open house, and the workshop. Here's a list of where we've been since January. There was a little bit of work in the prior year, of course, but we had some discussion in the first 3 months about the citizen engagement. The ROS was formed, began having meetings. In about April, work began in earnest on the survey, both in terms of the question development and the methodology. Back in May, we had a joint meeting, much like this one, with the Township Board and the Planning Commission to discuss subsequent steps and where we were. At that time, we also released the first 4 chapters of the master plan for some comment. A lot of that material could be assembled without the need for extensive community engagement, since we are largely describing the township and the land use and population characteristics and history and those sorts of things. So along about June, we started with the actually conducting the survey. I think June, the responses were due like middle of June, and they started coming in. And then we had to, of course, hired Networks Northwest to help tabulate the results and help put that survey online so that we would have a independent and objective source of data. They subsequently gave us the report that was produced by the software. They entered all of the written surveys that were obtained, and we were able to pull that all together into a report, which is on the township website. Along about July and August, we also started planning for the open house and the workshop. As you know, we hired Leah to help us with those efforts. And let's see here, in September, the report on the survey results was released. We had our open house, our first open house during that middle of September, I believe. And that open house was well received. We had somewhere around 80 to 100 people attending that. Many of you were there, of course, and you know what took place. We had good feedback from that open house. It was an effort to rather informally discuss with residents how they felt about various issues. We put boards up where people could vote on certain topics. They could leave sticky notes for comments. A lot of good input was received. Then after that, in October, we began planning for our workshop, and that occurred last month in November. And we had our workshop. We had somewhere around 50 people, 40, 50 people, I think, attended that. We did also give an evaluation form for people to fill out and got very good reviews on the productivity of that workshop and got some good feedback in terms of the results. At the Planning Commission meeting last week, we had the report from Leah that was produced that gave us the summary of all of the information from both the open house and the workshop. So we have, again, an objective source of information about what was said at the workshop as well as the open house, and that gives us a good platform now to work forward. So as I said, in December, the results were provided, and we're having this special joint meeting to kind of put an exclamation point behind all the work that was done. Well, going forward, we have a number of steps that we anticipate. That is beginning to release the final 3 to 4 chapters of the master plan for review and comment. And our goal is to have a full master plan document provided to the planning commission for its April meeting. So a lot of these chapters here could not be written until we have public input, and we can build on what was learned from that. And from that point, then I would expect in May, the planning commission review and edits, and then from that point forward, going into a formal adoption process per the Michigan Planning Enabling Act. That includes distribution of the plan and comments coming back. There's a very specific statutory requirement for how master plans are adopted. So that's essentially where we've been, what we see going forward. Happy to answer questions before or any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe we could break it down. Now we'll just pause in the PowerPoint section, but page 14 has the link to chapters 1 through 4 of the draft. So we wanted to open this opportunity up to the board to let us know if you had any questions or comments or anything you wanted to share on those first 4 chapters that have been on the township website. Cheryl?
I haven't gotten to it yet.
Okay,
Sorry.
it's okay. Don?
I read it several months ago and was more historical, didn't really see anything
Yeah.
to add or delete to it, so.
Okay, yeah, that's the purpose of the first 4 is the historical. How about you, Ron?
Yeah, I had several comments when they were originally provided to us. And I would like to find that review, which I've not been able to do. I don't know what it was labeled, so I'm sorry.
It's okay. There's still time, obviously. Dardella?
I read through it. Like Don said, a lot of it's historical, and I've seen a lot of this before. There was a lot of good information in it, but it just felt like it went on so long.
Yeah.
I think it's because it was all historical and general data. I'm looking forward to the next chapters.
Me too. Me too. Yeah, and since you have a long history in the township, it is,
Yeah, it
It's
was
like-
interesting to me. There was things in there that surprised me that I didn't know,
yeah,
so.
okay. Well, like I said, there's still time, so if you do get a chance, Cheryl, or you find your review, Ron, or you come up with any questions, please let us know, because we would like to get that addressed before the draft is, coming to your table, so that'd be great. So then we'll skip on to Leah, which is pages 15 through 57, so that's quite a chunk of the packet. That particular document satisfies the contract deliverables. It summarizes the workshop, the open house, all of the work that they've done. Personally think they were phenomenal, professional, did a great job. So any questions or comments that you have for us on the Leah documents, pages 15 through 57?
Yes,
Go for it.
back at page 15,
Okay.
how many surveys were mailed out?
Ooh, that's a good question. I can't remember the exact number, but I will find it for you.
Okay.
Page 15, how many surveys? Yeah, I could give you a guess, but I'd rather give you an exact number. So if I
I
can,
understand.
okay,
Yep.
go ahead.
Back at page 17. Downtown,
Uh-huh.
there's support to develop more traditional downtown area in Williamsburg, okay? That's kind of, I assume, input from the public. Traditional look with seating, pedestrian scale lighting, permeable, transparent storefronts are preferred. So where are we gonna put pedestrian scale lighting down there? The setbacks of those buildings are already in the road right of way. you know, where will all that happen? Any thoughts on that?
That's probably talking about new construction.
And how you gonna get there?
What's that?
How you getting there?
You getting where?
Somebody have to come in and buy everything.
Well, I'm not saying you wouldn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just asking you a question. So how well did you think it out? Where'd you go next? If it's new construction?
Well, if it's new construction in the downtown area,
Mhm.
then it would have to go by whatever master plan. That's correct.
Correct.
No,
Not
No.
necessarily.
No.
You still got rules and regulations of what.
it would go by whatever the
streets
zoning
goes.
ordinance said.
Well, hopefully those two will be the same.
All right, I just wondered, you know, because there's space, a walkable street or a walkable downtown. I get the image of Kalkaska's new complete streets, right?
Mhm.
So several of us went there on a tour for an unrelated project. But they have lighting downtown, they have wide sidewalks. It's really a downtown, right? It makes a downtown feel. We don't have the luxury of space on either side of that road. So I just wondered how, because at some point in time, the planning commission is gonna come to the board asking us to implement it. So I'm just putting you on notice that some of these things will be impossible for us to implement, right?
And I would agree with that point too, if we would like to have our streets wider, but we have existing buildings in the way, the post office, the old fire hall, so that's not gonna happen because we're not gonna move the buildings and have a new street. So I would say what we'd wanna do is, just adopt what we have there for, we've got M72, what's gonna carry the traffic, and if our downtown traffic increases, I would think the current road we may have to be repaved could handle that traffic. But I don't think we're going to get to a point where we widen the downtown because we have no place to go.
Or maybe we come to the realization that the current village is not where you want your next downtown. And that you look at a different location within the town to develop a new downtown area.
Mhm.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
actually, what we're really talking about here, we're kind of jumping the gun a little bit. What we're really talking about here is the public input and the public desire for something. That doesn't mean we have to stick to that place or that street.
Right, we have to
Okay,
figure out
this
what
is
they want.
input that we are trying to figure out
Mhm.
what to do with or how to present it in a way that would work. So ideas are what we're looking for.
Yeah, that's actually, I was gonna say, that's the kind of stuff we need to hear. Like, that's not possible. We wouldn't necessarily all know that. You do. So anything else like that pops up in there, we need to.
I'm a supporter of buying the land down there, quite honestly. And so why can't the township be the landlord, for example? So we get rid of the undesirable things that might be there, right? And we have our second pearl in the park system right there. It seems to me like that would be a great area for the community to invest some dollars right there in that hub. We have water already.
Mhm.
Okay, we don't have sewer. But there is water there. And so that's the next step in some of your documentation here. So,
At a map convention that I went to, they had downtown development. And in one of those classes that I went to, they talked about something very similar that Ron is talking about. Where the community, the local government bought up a whole section, raised it to the ground, put the infrastructure in, and then resold it back to developers that were going to develop the area the way their master plan was set up and their zoning was set up. So they took the initial cost of getting the land ready for development, but they made the money back because they sold it to developers that were willing to develop it.
I've also seen townships and villages, whichever you prefer to be in, buy up stuff. Like maybe just buy 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 acres and put their own buildings up and actually be a landlord. Because
You
then they
think
can
that
give
in the
back
UK all the time?
into the community.
Back in 2015, I was surprised. There was no support for redeveloping that area. And now there is some. It doesn't mean we're going to do it right away, but it becomes something that people are now willing to support. Things become available that would say, hey, wait a minute, now there's a grant or there's something part of it that we can do, such as cleaning the area up and buying the property up. And there's this new, what is it? They talked to us last month, the development group that's just forming that we could get in on. And, it's something we can look in the future. Yeah, right now, obviously, some of the things you mentioned we can't do, widen the streets, but keeping that in mind, that is a want that some people are willing to support now. So as things become available, you start looking into that.
I think it's important that we help educate the community of what the cost would be to develop that, because that will either raise
Make it
support
or
or
break
get rid of
it.
support.
And so that's coming up in one more comment. Yeah.
There,
Yeah.
I know there are, grants, and I don't know if it's just because it's a village, but Kalkaska buys up old condemned homes
Mhm.
through grants. They level them and then they resell them. And
Yep.
I think that's a great idea if you're gonna try to do
Gets-
something like that.
Gets rid of the blight.
Yeah.
And they're in charge of it. So, same page, packet page 17. This one's under M72 and traffic. I have been
17, right? Yep.
a longtime supporter of the planning commission's authority to regulate or require traffic studies, but we don't do it. And so, we're talking about some development, probably along Cook Road, definitely, potentially along Skigmog Point Road and potentially along Baggs Road. All these intersections share a passing lane, which you make a left-hand turn from.
Mhm.
And it is Death Valley in that passing lane. The first car behind you dodges you. It's the second car behind you that slams you, right? So everybody there's a concern of who pays for this. We make the developer pay for it. Our fire ordinance says that fire chief has the authority to hold and escrow some money. So a fire inspection can be conducted by a third-party plan reviewer. We too, I think, or the planning commission could have that authority.
Okay. This is new to me, so talk to me more about the escrow and talk to me more about the third party, what you were just saying. Tell me a little more.
We got a lot of comments here.
Yeah, I know.
So, if I'd be happy to talk to anybody outside of this meeting. I don't want to be the meeting hog here, okay?
Yep.
So, escrow, third party, just make a note, we'll get together on that, and I can share with you the language from the fire ordinance, for example.
Okay.
I had
Yeah,
a
it's probably
question
just
to
me that
that,
doesn't-
Rachel, could we make what Ron is saying, let's say, and that is a good idea, because what we're gonna wind up with, if we're not careful, is what they wind up on the horse show. In the summer, you've got 2-lane there and you've got people trying to get out.
Right.
You got people trying to get in, and I'm just amazed that they don't just leave an ambulance parked there, but we're okay so far. But so we don't wind up with that, could you not make the person who proposes a project, that is part of our approval process, that you have to do a traffic study.
So
You
what
have to produce it to us.
right, so what I'm wondering is when we get more like April, May, looking at the zoning stuff more specifically, if I'm not the only one that doesn't understand this process, could we invite you, Ron, maybe to educate us to one of our meetings?
Sure.
And you would tell all of us, but if I'm the only one that doesn't know, then I'll just get with you, but otherwise,
Yeah,
if we all need to hear about it.
I like your idea about getting him back to a meeting and help educate all of us.
Okay,
Puts us all on the same page.
okay, I agree. All right.
That's right, it lets us know expectations, so it's even better.
So same page under facilities. And
Okay,
again, we had a very high level, light on detail needs study. We mainly looked at buildings, right? I had some very preliminary conversations with the same engineering firm about water and sewer. I think our buildings came back at what, 8 to 10 million? Or was it a little more? Does anybody remember what that need study was?
I thought that combined I thought it was combined was 12.
Okay,
And water was huge.
yeah,
Yeah,
It was big bucks.
like 25 million.
right. Water and sewer is just, so, when you think about water and sewer, and just because somebody said that's what we want, we have to address what they want. And maybe you guys can do this as funds become available, for example. Maybe that's a statement that you put in the master plan. You not only have the upfront costs, but then you have the operational costs. And so those operational costs can vary. But if you think about 2,500 users, if everybody signed up, we still can't support a sewer system. So it's just hugely
It's
expensive.
like an unfunded mandate is what it would be. We don't have the money and we don't have the people to support it right
And-
now.
Yeah, and so when we're thinking about making these recommendations in our master plan, and I'm gonna steal from Don here, think about an off ramp that maybe this scope of work or this project is too big for us right now.
I agree. I think we all have that already in mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
We know what can't be done at this time, but we
right.
do
I
want to
mean,
let the
right.
people know that, hey, we understand what you said. And
But you're planning out
Center.
for how many years? I mean,
right,
20.
could
10
be
more
longer than that for
years.
some
So,
things. right?
This area is gonna
Yeah.
continue to grow and, funding opportunities will become available and it might be doable in 5 to 10 years.
So back at page 18, unless somebody else has anything else.
The floor is yours, looks like.
Under general feedback, bullet point number 2. Condition and the need for better, more maintenance were mentioned several times. On what? Were we talking trails? Were we talking roads? Were we talking?
Okay,
So,
let me go to the package.
know, if there's a clarification point there potentially,
Is it listed under?
it was listed under
How is it
facilities.
listed on the board?
General feedback.
General feedback.
Okay.
I would say roads, because what else could you put that category in?
You said,
Could
you said
apply to
packet page
anything.
18
Yes, ma'am. Under
Bullet
general
point.
feedback,
to,
bullet point 2.
oh, there it is. So it. I think it was roads too, but we'd have to go, that's a good point,
I
so,
was gonna have to go back and see where the stickies were.
yeah. That's, I'll make a note to double look at that.
You can't really.
Good catch.
Facilities,
Well, it could be trails, right? I
trails,
mean,
could be park, could be anything really.
it certainly could be trails, right?
Yeah.
So, we just need to be able to focus in one particular
Figure out which
place.
one it is.
Same page, number 3, I think the board is already working on an enforcement directive, so we might be ahead of you on that one. Cool. Packet page 19. All the way to the bottom. Last line, number 2, added goal. Need to have more R1 zoning. And all zones need to be reviewed. Earlier in this document, you indicated that protecting the rural character, I even think there's somewhat of a definition that you kind of landed on. So R1 is the tightest density zoning that we have. So if we wanted rural open spaces, is it R1 that we want to create?
That is one of the main arguments or main goals we're dealing with. People want and we want and need more housing. And then we, on the other side, want to keep it rural. It's, how do you do both? Maybe you do it without having a lot more R1, but you have certain areas like across the road there where you have some like 2 or 3 story apartment buildings and little areas that are tucked into areas where you have the denser housing, but not big, you know, what's the word? Projects where you just have a whole lot of homes side by side, 100-foot lots, or, you know, I grew up on or lived for 30 years in Allen Park where we had 40-foot by 120 lots.
Right.
But if I don't understand, well, I do understand from Mike. I don't agree with it because I want to preserve farms. Why we allow 1-acre lots in an agricultural district? Because the guy sells his 40-acre or 80-acre farm and all of a sudden you've got a huge project going there and we can't stop it. Because the R1, I mean, the A1, but R1, yeah, you know, there's a big discussion. People want it 5 acres, people want it 1 acre, people want it less. That's something that through this whole process, we're gonna have to deal with and see if we can come up with some kind of compromises. Maybe there's something that some other township has done that we could look at and say, hey, this kind of meets that plan, but that's why we're here.
Okay.
One thing we gotta always keep, these are recommendations. These are things to think about. These are things we have to do. These are things we need to ponder and discuss and figure out if they're feasible or if they work for our township. Just because somebody wants something in our township doesn't mean that this small handful of people's idea is the best thing for our township. These are suggestions that the community has come up with, and we need to go over them with the whole community in mind, not just the 1 or 10 or 20 people that made this comment.
Right.
But the point is that there is going to be growth, the projected growth. What was it? What, I can't remember the number. What was the projected growth? Is 10% or like 160 new families or something like that moving into our area for a certain amount of time. So your job as planning commission is to plan where these new homes are gonna go. And what kind of homes are they gonna be? So you have to look ahead and be Mr. Wizard and figure out what is the best. And yeah, what do people want? Do they want individual homes? I mean, when I was a kid, I grew up in a neighborhood. All people knew each other, the kids played together, it was a neighborhood.
They were all our family, by the way.
Yeah.
It was the Bennett hood.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up in the Bennett. There was life before Bennett, okay? But I grew up in a neighborhood and I couldn't think of anything better because as a kid, that's what you want. There's other kids, there's families. I mean, it was a community. Rural communities are the same, only they've got some distance usually between them.
What was the distance between the houses? That was a tight community as well, right?
When I lived in Antelope, I lived right in the downtown
Yeah.
area, so the homes were no more than 15 feet apart.
Mhm.
And when I moved to Acme, well, you know what, that little neighborhood by Christ the King is.
Yep.
That's where I primarily grew up after that, and the homes are more spread out. But it was still a neighborhood.
Yeah, and they're probably on less than an acre.
So
So
some,
that's what we're looking, that's the density that we're trying to define. Like you said, keep it rural. We do need to have a place for people to build and live. But just like what you said, that was a nice community and that was on probably less than an acre lots.
so something I think that we've sort of started talking about and plan to dive into deeper as we get more completed with our master plan and start working on the zoning is some PUDs and things that are beneficial to all, you know, it kind of helps both situations. So we've started to touch on that. I've actually, also Tom McAlwee has helped out and he's reached out to somebody to come maybe talk to us. It sounds like she'll be able to come maybe in the early parts of the year to talk to us about how you protect land, but deal with growth and stuff like that too, to help educate us. So looking forward to some more, learning some more as we try to tackle all of these seemingly impossible things. Everybody wants something a little different,
It could be just one choice,
right?
you know?
They all intertwine, all these ordinances.
Exactly.
Like Carl said, you know, there is some need here for apartment complex. You
Yeah,
know, and maybe, and I don't know if you've looked at them or not, but with all the retirees, we've got these tiny home communities. Those are viable for the people that want 2 homes. They live somewhere and then they live here and they're all downsizing. You know, it's a, definitely an option.
I think what was an eye opener was listening to the school system talk about how people can't afford to even move into our township. You know, how can they buy a 1 acre lot and then try to put a house on it? You know, so I think, hate to use the word, because everybody uses it, diversity, but even diversity in housing
It's rough.
is what we have to look at, and we have to look at all of it, I think. And that's the hard part, because some people don't want some of the types of housing, but you know,
If you look at the age of our population after the census and you look at all the different groups, it'd be really wise to find a way to integrate the young with the old and not limit it to just, you know, 1, 2, 3 bedrooms, but where you have everybody in the community can live there. You're just not limited to, you know, you might have some on the first floor or some on the 3rd floor. But you're gonna have stairs. Cause I don't see you going 5, 6, 7 stories, cause then you gotta find out a way to fight a fire for that. Anything over 5, we'll need more trucks.
Well, anytime you talk about that kind of density, even multifamily, the R3 that you're proposing, we don't have the facilities. The only place we have those facilities is at High Prairie Park. So we could potentially sell High Prairie Park and have water to an apartment complex. We won't have sewer.
Kinda hard. Like that.
Well, certainly as growth continues to happen, infrastructure improvements are gonna have to be made. Water's gonna have to be extended, natural gas is gonna have to be extended. Something, to provide sewer is going to have to happen. I think there's probably some options out there that, we don't know about that, would fit in this community. And generally, a developer is gonna pay for those things to go in. The township's not gonna be expected to pay for that, depending on the developer that comes in, but.
You know, one idea there too is when you look at large pieces of land, Acme Township has a lot of them too. There may be a thing in the future where Whitewater and Acme could go together and possibly get a grant and put in a sewer system, because it sounds like and the water is more available than the sewer, but until there's a sewer system that we could afford and put in, then it's probably a lot of the development isn't going to happen. They're not going to be interested in it.
Acme is currently tagging onto East Bay.
Are they?
Yep.
For sewer, so for sewer, yep. And the tribe has shortcutted, actually shut out Acme Township from the water supply. They're supplying water directly to the developers.
Okay,
So that's what's going on there.
and you
said
know,
it was
that's a
for
good,
sewer and water, or for just?
No, they're just water.
Just water,
Yeah,
okay.
and Acme Township is adding or expanding into, extending the East Bay sewer into Acme Township. So the same page, packet page 20, I guess. There towards the middle, you have a planning principle. And that is to preserve Whitewater Township's rural character. And my recommendation is you get a nailed down definition of that. And it's posted on every document. Because right now, Bob Hall said, and I concur with his statement, and Carl goes directly to something you said. Rural must be defined as one house every 40,000 square feet in the agricultural district, because that's what the underlying zoning is. And so I kind of concur with his observation of what rural character is.
Real character means something different to everybody. You don't have a definition in here. You're just fighting problem.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And we discuss that every meeting.
Yep.
Same packet page. Bullet point number 7 under planning principles. I think we've tried to have some voluntary architectural design guidelines. I know we definitely tried to have the mandatory guidelines back in, I don't know, I'm gonna say 2006 maybe. There was a big push to bring in a new zoning ordinance, and it didn't fare well.
I think that particular comment was aimed more at industrial or the commercial zone, because I remember in the our second workshop there, our second open house workshop, whatever we're gonna call it. Group I was in talked about this, and I brought that particular point up, and we specified
Michael, your mic.
in the group I was in that second open house we had, we that topic came up, and we aimed the architectural design at not at residential homes, more at commercial and industrial buildings. It wasn't really meant to, we specified not to aim it at housing.
And so we have Article 32 or 33, which has a very robust green belt, green area, and landscape articles in it. Somewhere in this document, somebody made a comment that some of the images are even printed backwards, which they are. So I know you're aware of that article, but I think there's a pretty robust one in place already. But we just haven't had a lot of development in the commercial district.
Correct.
You know, really, that was another comment here. What's the build out look like of the commercial district? How many parcels do we actually have available?
I don't think we've got there yet.
172.
Well, that's, again, reading from this document, I think your description is everything west of Cook Road is going to be the commercial development area. So, are there 4 parcels left to develop?
I'm gonna stray from that question a little bit, because I don't know the answer to your question, but already in this group tonight, the idea was brought up that maybe that isn't the correct area to turn into a commercial area. Maybe there's somewhere else. At the moment, that's where we're zoned,
Sure,
but
yeah,
we have the ability to change.
Change
that.
oh, yeah, yeah,
So, I don't know if we have an answer.
Yeah.
for
As
that.
of yet for that.
Right. yeah, so, I mean. We're good.
Well, if you're looking down the road 5 to 20 years, and you look at how much commercial district we have right now with places that can be developed, we need to think about that. Do we need to come up with a larger commercial district to accommodate growth and additional tax base for the township? You know, maybe there we got some things that are south of 72 where they're not being developed, but you know, they're in a recreational area or something, not that far away where we could, that you could think about it. And then the other part of that is you need the infrastructure. And what I've been told is we don't have enough electricity, good roads, water to support a larger industrial district at this time. That goes in the plumbing with everything else. What are these items have to come first to reach the next objective? There's no point in planning, you know, a larger industrial area if you can't support it. So we need to get these infrastructures up to snuff to, if we choose to go that route as a community. You know, some people want it, some don't.
I think Cheryl had a good point there too, though. If somebody said they wanted, let's say somebody wanted to build a big factory on 72, then they would probably have to put the bill if it took extending the sewer or the water. That would probably have to be part of their expenses that they'd have to look at.
Well, there's that one section in here about a development ready. We get to that. That has all of this in it. We don't have any development ready areas.
Yeah, and yeah, you're absolutely right, Carl. There isn't, and while we can make the developer pay for maybe a traffic study, we're not gonna
Make it pay for a.
we're not gonna make them pay for a septic treatment plant
Yeah.
and a water tower and the water main.
No, you'll be lucky if you get some stoplights and some left turn lanes.
Yeah, so,
Cause remember, they're gonna want something in return. We're gonna build, what are you gonna do for us now? And we'll give you a tax break for a while.
Well, it sounds like where we're at is what we need, we can't afford. And what we also need, we don't see how we're going to afford it. So the issue, it's not going to be solved
So
because we can't afford
overnight.
it. We can't afford a sewage treatment plant to run down, and we can't afford to put in the city water. And so we're going in circles.
I want to ask, so Cheryl made a really good point, I thought earlier, that you don't know what funding is available, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, and we're looking that far in advance. So I'm going to ask Randy to help me out. How do we address these things? Looking ahead, but knowing our zoning ordinance needs to be for now, but we're trying to make the zoning ordinance match the 20-year plan. So can you help us wrap our heads around that, or at least me?
I can try to, I guess, you know, as development occurs, infrastructure follows, or infrastructure follows and development occurs. So, developers will certainly pay for extending sewer and water lines to support development, but the basic infrastructure, the plants, the water plants, the towers, the facilities have to be done by the local governments, of course. So, we've got a lot of issues out there, but look at how cities grow in general. Infrastructure expands to support demand for growth and development. It happens. There's grants that help fund some of that. It's a very complex picture of how all that happens.
So do you write the master plan knowing that we don't have the funding, so therefore what folks are telling us they want, we can't give them, so we don't put it there? Or do we put it there and then work towards that long term, and how do you set the zoning to meet that needs? I guess I'm not having gone through this process. I guess I'm not seeing the long picture.
Well,
Or maybe I'm not even
I-
asking
I
the
have
question
one
right.
Question of that, are we trying to plan out too far ahead?
You gotta go.
No,
10
I
years
think you have to be
right?
prepared. I mean, there is a lot of growth pressure here.
Mhm.
Obviously, this is one of the few areas of Michigan that's growing, actually.
Mhm.
And growing at a fairly rapid pace, so comparatively. You don't have a lot of growth elsewhere in the state. You have demand for projects. You have a lot of activity happening in Traverse City, of course, Acme, all the surrounding townships. We're right next to it. I can expect that this will happen. It's exactly hard to predict exactly when, but your planning has to prepare for it.
Well, I do like what Cheryl said. It's, we are planning ahead. We don't know what's available to us in the future. It could be available to us. We don't know.
When you don't have
So we
infrastructures,
just-
sometimes you look at going green too.
So we plan for it and we hope that in the future sometime that we'll be able to implement it, but we don't have to put necessarily a date on it.
Yeah, the master
No.
plan is the vision looking forward. It isn't
Right.
the rules that get us there. And I know this is a real basic kind of statement, but really, in my mind, a statement in the master plan that says, this is the kind of input we got at this point in time. We don't have the funds to make that happen, but we think the community should look for the means to make these types of things happen as we move into the future. Yeah, and that's, yeah,
That could
it's
be-
not, I mean, we don't have to have the exact plan because we don't know the exact plan, but the idea is to steer us in that direction. And none of us have the answer how to make it happen, but to put that in the master plan, that this is the direction the community wants to go, I think is what our job is.
Yes, I agree with that. And as part of that, I say that right now, at anything, when we come up with a plan that we can do now, it should be such that it can become larger in the future or more developed if it needs to be. You don't go and make it so that we can never make this bigger for whatever reason that we sold off the land of
You
developer.
lock yourself in.
You just you do need to plan, like they say, out to 20 years, but you don't, you know what you can really do now that people want. You just don't want to do it in such a way that it blocks off things down the road if you don't have to.
And no matter what we plan here, doesn't mean that the future is gonna give us what we were planning for. And
Exactly.
the school the school right here in Williamsburg is a very good example of that. Right from the very beginning, I never thought that was a good idea. If they're gonna put a new building in, it should have been up in Elk Rapids with the other buildings. Now what do we got? Now we got a problem here. And the community didn't grow the way at the time, it looked like it was going to. Okay, at the time, it looked like that was all gonna happen, but it didn't. And here we
But
are.
it may down the road, 20 years.
Well, yeah, but 20 years from now, that building isn't gonna be in the kind of shape it's in now.
So let me add another thought to that, though, in that the master plan is going to define how you want to change. Okay, I mean, developers typically like that when a community has a well-written, well-reasoned master plan that defines what it wants. What they don't like is communities that don't know and say, bring something in here, make me happy. That's
There's
almost,
no guidelines for them.
it's crazy for them to spend money. And it does take a lot of money to do up site plans, to look at feasibility studies, to look at extending infrastructure, to do all that pre-development costs, and then bring that into a community and then have it shoot it down. Because you don't know what you want and you leave it up to whatever angry neighbors show up that night.
So maybe, I don't mean to interrupt, but maybe my question then, Ron, is maybe I'm misinterpreting you're bringing this stuff up. Is it your personal opinion because you don't want to see the growth, or you're just helping us understand that the money's not here today, or
It's B, right? And so
Okay.
the last thing I want is for you all to be disappointed because the board doesn't accept your work because these things become somewhat of a mandate, right? It's already been said here tonight that the zoning ordinance is going to be changed to meet the master plan goals. So if some of these are listed as goals, we need to be careful we're not putting ourselves in a box. And one of the first things we can do for infrastructure, looking 50 years down the road, is to buy land.
So you have
Because
somewhere to put it.
we're gonna need 30 acres for
Just for
a
sewer.
septage. And we're going to need no less than 5 wells. So you need at least 3 well fields. So you're looking at anywhere between 30 and 100 acres of land.
Okay.
And when those parcels come available, we need to be able to buy them. And so maybe that's your directive to the board, how to maybe begin to address some of this. You know, there was a property that went for like 140 grand right next to High Prairie Park. We should have bought it. It was a house. We could have been the landlord, not for profit, but just to slowly start buying that land up for the future. So maybe that's how you bring all of these can't afford right now projects to the board and maybe ask them that, you know, when the opportunity comes, don't turn them down so fast, you know, whatever the case might be.
I'd like to just make a comment about that, though. I think that's a great idea in terms of looking ahead to what our future needs are. But I would also suggest that we look at the idea of having a separate community development agency, organization, entity, nonprofit, whatever you want to call it, consider doing that. And that it's harder often for a local government to buy and sell real estate. So there may be other avenues, but the concept of trying to secure key pieces of property to support infrastructure is a good one. I think.
Yeah.
I think that's
And
definitely something.
your use of a third party would be advantageous. So we saw that at Elmer's down there in the pit, right? When I want to say Carl, but that's not right. Who sold it?
Ray and Velma.
Yeah, right, thank you. So third-party buyers are very helpful. And Acme Township didn't use a third party when they attempted to buy the Bertha Voss School.
And now look at it.
And
It's
it
a
didn't work
mess.
out well for them. So it's a good suggestion.
You know, the other thing we haven't really looked into either, you guys, is sometimes when you don't have infrastructure, sometimes you can go out and find people that have new green ideas for projects. Like they build buildings and they're all self-contained. Whether they have a grass roof and they bring the water in that way, you know, there's all kinds of things that are new. And I guess we'll just consider them green. But I watched a gentleman put up a green wall. It only had 4 buildings, you know, 4 connected stores, but he lasted quite a long time before you know, people just weren't buying the products that were being sold. So
Do you have something else, Randy?
Yeah, I just want to come back to a number of points, but I want to keep going in terms of the comments that you have, and then I'm going to circle back to a
this
few points
nobody
that
said
were
anything
made.
about going green.
Yeah, I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, you want to go ahead then, Randy?
Are you done with all the comments on
Oh.
But
No, but let's move on.
in terms of comments and feedback from what you've said,
Yeah.
okay.
And if
All right.
anybody's
So-
interested in the full comment booklet, I can forward my
Well,
packet.
of course we
Yeah,
are.
we'd like.
Yeah, absolutely we are, but we are gonna have to move on. So we're gonna
Take
we'll
it
circle back
apart.
to what you
Yeah.
mentioned and what Randy has to say, and then we'll move on.
There's a couple of points about downtown Williamsburg here in terms of, you know, the zoning ordinance already requires a certain amount of setback and permitted uses. The question is, does that align to what people are suggesting that they want to see the area look like? So that's job one in my mind is to review the setbacks, for example. You know, do we require a 30-foot setback in the village district? I'm not sure. You know, do we require parking to be in front of the building? I'm not sure, but all those kind of things are contrary to a downtown area. So we need to review what's in the zoning ordinance now and see, does that align with what people are telling us that they want in terms of changes to that? Now, then there's more steps that can be taken, but, so I want to make that point because we already require certain things. And
Is it
is
like
that
building
really
a
aligning to
software
what
difference?
people want? I don't know. I'm not sure it does. Secondly, on the traffic impact studies, that's another good idea in the sense that I've written a number of those kind of sections to site plan ordinances, to site plan review ordinances, where you require when traffic generation is expected to be above a certain level, that a traffic impact study be done. But you have to go through a fair amount of detail to describe what's in that. Who does that study? At what level do you require that traffic impact study? Believe it or not, there's manuals that engineers use that say that a Burger King will produce of so many square feet will produce 50 cars in a peak hour on a Thursday afternoon. They know that from studies. So you can say that if we have a development that goes above that projected level of traffic generation, that we require a traffic impact study. And then we describe what that study has to contain and who can do it.
And who pays for it?
And well, the developer naturally pays for it, but then, and then what do they evaluate that for? Are we looking at combining curb cuts? Are we looking at limiting the number of curb cuts? Are we looking at aligning the curb cuts with what's across the street? There's a lot of different variables in there, but that's an important thing to do. And then
Can I
finally,
interrupt for a second, Randy?
Yeah.
So everybody's familiar with Ron, right? Have you been through south of town lately? They are actually out there by the new Bish RV and the couple of marinas out there. They actually now have a service road between 31, 37 and those businesses
Yep.
to
Eliminate.
minimize those curb cuts. And so, you know, we have that opportunity here in Williamsburg by using Old 72.
we do.
Now, we can have the nice storefronts out front, but the business is out back.
But we need something in the ordinance that specifically calls that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, you know, thinking about all of those, take a drive out there. Apparently you guys have, and I thought that was a neat idea. I don't know how they did that.
Cut down a lot of traffic.
Well,
Menards is out that way, I go out there every day.
Oh,
so if you look back to the first 4 chapters, we talk about access management, and
Yeah.
exactly
Yep.
that point.
Yep.
So that was anticipating this kind of conversation that we would have. The last point I wanted to make about was rural character, and rural character is not just density. We talked about that at a planning commission meeting. Mill Creek here is one of the most dense places you have in the township. But if you look at it, you know, driving down Williamsburg Road, it looks rural. You still see kind of a rural flavor to that, but you have a fair amount of density in there. So as we think about rural character, it's not just units per acre. It's how the area is designed, which wants to put people into the PUD kind of scenario, which Mill Creek is. So there's an opportunity to look at the site, what it has to offer, how to protect it, how to protect the views. And density is important, but it's not the only variable, not the only thing we need to be worried about.
Anybody else have anything about Leah's document that, and you're gonna share the rest of your comments with us, right? And we can probably include that in one of our packets so we can review it all. But does anybody else have anything on the Leah stuff? Don,
I do not.
Ardella,
No, I'm good.
Cheryl, you shook your head. Okay. Then I'm gonna totally put Keith on the spot because we didn't talk about this, but ROS is the next thing up. So do you want to share what we decided, and since you were the chair of the ROS?
You know, as far as what we're doing with the Arrows committee.
Yeah.
Yes. The ROS committee was phenomenal. They had to go through a couple different changes in chairs, and as I took over in chair, you know, I was thinking I would have to organize everything, and I didn't. They had everything planned. They were doing everything just wonderful, and it was more me trying to keep up with them. So we had talked about a couple different things. Now the ROS has kind of come to an end. about what would happen if we have to have other committees in the future. Different committees for different things, and we suggested that, we stay with one core committee. We have some great people, and we can add to that as necessary. But we'd like to take the ROS committee and then just utilize them again, and we're thinking like in April, but we get to more things with the ordinances and other things with the master plan to review. We're thinking about just using one committee to do everything instead of having all these different committees for different things. Because we had a little committee for, trying to get the ordinance thing passed, and we had the ROS committee, and we just don't have enough people. And trying to get public help to that is also tough. So I think we come to the conclusion that that's probably our best bet is we're going to kind of put it on a pause for now. And then when April hits up again, we'll probably bring that committee back again, maybe name it something different, but it'll be basically the same committee with maybe some new people in it too, depending on what exactly we're going to be doing with it. But definitely that's the way to go. They were just phenomenal. They did a great job, and they were really into it. It wasn't, pulling nails, trying to get anything done. It was more trying to keep up with them.
Any questions or comments from the board on the committees or the committee?
Got really lucky because everybody's coming back.
We wanted to leave.
I think the outreach is the gem of this process so far, right? And, those people likely work behind the scenes without many thanks and so on and so forth. So, keeping good people is important. And, and you can probably name them whatever you want, but it's really still going to be an outreach type function to gain insight on whatever questions you guys come up with. So, yeah, great. I'm glad you were able to recognize the value of them.
Yeah. Maybe even name it just the Get Her Done Committee.
Yeah.
They did that. They worked hard.
Definitely
They
did get
did.
it done.
They're amazing.
Every deadline they hit.
Okay, are we good on that one? If so, I'm gonna move to packet page 59 to 62, which is just a repeat. You've seen it before, just to kind of give you a overview of what's coming, as Randy showed you in the timeline. We're hoping for, probably May, June. We'll be working towards that section. So are there any questions or comments you want to share with us or thoughts on that process? You guys are a lively bunch.
I told them to go to work late today.
It's late for me, trust me. I'd rather be in bed myself. Okay, we'll move on then. Vision and goals from the May 17th meeting. Really just a reminder to show you that what we set out to do is what we're actually doing. Were there any questions on that? You guys are a bunch. Then we'll move on to zoning project, which I think we'll go back to the PowerPoint for start of that. Thank you, Randy. If I'm never not pausing long enough for something and you think of something, it's just pipe up, okay? You're not gonna, it's not going to hurt my feelings, I promise you.
Well, from the board, thank you, because we're all bashful.
Yeah, right, okay.
Okay, let me just make a few introductory comments about the zoning clarification project. The choice of the word clarification is very intentional here. We mean to clarify the existing zoning ordinance. And I know you've heard some of this before, but our focus is to review and incorporate amendments, including locating those that were missing, adding and updating definitions where needed, eliminating redundancy, in some cases, the same requirements in more than one place written differently. We want to produce one Microsoft Word document and add links when we're done, so you can click on something and go to a relevant section. We also see an opportunity to reorganize the material so that material is next to each other. This includes collapsing a number of articles from 37 to about 15. And then eliminating legal descriptions to define zoning districts and creating a new official zoning map to be adopted. And finally, reviewing for consistency with the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act that was passed in 2006, I believe. What we're avoiding doing is changing our process or procedures unless it is contrary to the Michigan Zoning Enabling Act. We don't want to do any changes to permitted or special uses at this point. That may happen after the master plan is complete and it's recommending certain actions, or any changes to development standards such as setbacks, lot sizes, building heights, these sorts of things. Even though there are a number of them that are probably suspect. We are also making a list of potential amendments for the future. Some of this you'll see in the master plan itself. We are up to about 15 items, I think, of areas that need to be changed, but we consider them to be more substantial and deserving of special attention, not rolled up into a large clarification project. And as I said, most of them would be recommendations generated by the master plan. One of the elements of the Michigan Planning Enabling Act is that the master plan should contain a list of how the zoning ordinance needs to change in order to implement the master plan. It actually calls that out as a specific element. So we intend to do that. So where we've been here since really started in July, August, we've had some meetings with the clerk, Bob Hall, Ron Pop, et cetera. We began reviewing some materials, generating draft documents that you have in your packet. We've looked at those in October and November. We had some substantial discussion at the Planning Commission about what constitutes change and what is clarification. I think we have that in our minds now fairly clearly. We are trying at all costs to stay away from any changes. If we make changes, we have to put $5 in a bucket and to penalize ourselves for even talking about change. And then Planning Commission discussion of the zoning map, which just happened. And then of course now we want to be sure that we are on the same page with the township board in terms of how this is unfolding. We expect the 2024 to include more discussion, more draft articles. You have in your packet is what the Planning Commission has seen. There is more material that is going to be provided next month and in future months as we work through it. It's quite possible we'll have to go back to changing some of these early chapters as, for example, adding definitions or changing a definition to make it more accurate. In some cases, we found problems with the word building footprint and lot coverage, and it's all very technical and somewhat boring, but we want to, zoning language has to be precise. It has to be clear. There isn't really room for vagueness in that. That creates problems, as you all know, when the zoning ordinance isn't clear about what it requires. So our aim is to clarify that. And let's see here. One of the primary issues that we have discussed is the zoning map. And I want to pull up a separate presentation that we had to talk about that specifically. So we have a zoning map now that has been used by the township. It appeared in your 2015 master plan and it's been on your website. That's the document that we used at the workshops and at the open house. All of these sorts of maps are generally produced by some sort of a GIS system where you have data layers that are overlaid over each other. Get bore you with all the technical stuff. It's either a vector line or it's an image. The vectors are either lines or parcels or polygons. This is some examples of zoning maps around the country. They all pretty much look the same. These are ones I've worked on Erie Township down in Monroe County, West Carrollton outside Dayton, a suburb, Coldwater, et cetera. We have the parcel layer available from the county. It looks like this. It is all of the parcels that they show. All of those lines are property lines, and all of them are associated with parcel numbers. As you may know, you can go onto the county website and identify a parcel, and it gives you some basic information about that. It also gives you, that's the same information that the assessor uses for taxation purposes. We've had some conversations so far with the county about coming up with a zoning map that is utilizing the current parcel layer for Whitewater Township. This is the latest version of that. We know there are some problems with this at this point. We have not cleaned up yet. There is an issue with the industrial zone. So this is not accurate. And the reason I haven't printed this out is we don't want any other zoning maps floating around. There is one zoning map that the township has used, and this is a work in progress. It is not final. Some of the problems, of course, as you might guess, are in the more developed portions of the township. So that's where we are, trying to work through that. I know Ron has had some conversations, and I have with the surveyor. He's not done with the industrial district yet, as of yesterday, but still working on that. Working through the legal descriptions to determine if we have what we have shown is correct.
And I think that should be done in all districts. I know it's a pricey thing, but we have that legal description. Is that how that map was generated? None of us know. So, you know, I'm opposed to leaving the legal descriptions behind 100%. You know, I can read a legal description, maybe other people can too. But I realize we have to make the zoning map usable for everyone, and not everyone can read a legal description. And so I'm just saying that we shouldn't throw them away. Somewhere we need to save them. So.
When I'm in agreement with Ron, when we had talked, I talked with Randy about picking some points in our township and having something like a double click where the legal description of a specific end point would be. That would give you a place to correlate to, because you know the exact distance from point A to point B. And that would also prove or verify the boundaries of our township. So as we're doing this map, I think we need to be all on the same page of what we want to wind up with. And I'm not sure if we're there yet.
And it from the flavor of what I read, specifically scale and detail and so on and so forth, I got the feeling that you were moving away from an interactive map, which I would encourage us to move towards technology and use an interactive map. Now, we can, and specifically, okay, so we could agree that whatever map you guys decide on is the official zoning map. Those shape files are then locked into position until we update it, right? But that'll allow you to zoom in right to a parcel level, right? If you use those files. And we had those, we had similar files generated for us on Skeegamog Point Road. And I could share those with the group. It allowed people to zoom right in on their property to see if their favorite pine tree was going to be in the way of road work and had to come down. So you could see the tops of mailboxes, for example. Now, that was just one road, and it was like 10 divided into 10 maps. So it was a big, big file. But it is possible.
Well, I think it will be interactive. If we're using the county's map, all we're doing is making our own layer.
Well, there's
So
language.
they'll be able to zoom in on the county map and see where our zoning.
There
is.
was language in here, and I didn't mean to interrupt,
No,
I'm
it's fine.
sorry, that I think it was under an interpretation section, if I remember correctly, or maybe yeah, I think it was under interpretation of the map section. Where it says, if the map is not of specific scale or correct scale to allow you to determine if a parcel is in a particular district or not, then I think the decision goes to the ZBA, if I
Correct.
remember the words
Yep.
correctly.
Yep.
So that led me to believe that this was a hard paper document.
That's correct. And let me also explain that the zoning map is part of the zoning ordinance. It is referenced in the ordinance document itself. And then there is a separate map that is signed by the clerk and the supervisor and has a date and also lists all of the amendments that might happen after it. So that zoning map is part of the ordinance. Now, if you also do an interactive map, that's great and that's helpful to people. But I'm not an attorney, but I've been told by numerous attorneys that your zoning map has to be linked to your zoning ordinance. It has to be part and parcel to it. You have your zoning ordinance is the written document and the map.
Can't you link an electronic map?
If it had the proper signatures on it, if there was a way to
In
do that
proper-
part,
Proper documentation,
yes.
supporting it and proper protection.
Like
Right.
you're talking about document control, right?
Yeah,
Not
we are.
being
right.
able to change it again
Correct.
unless there's a document showing if it's the
Yeah.
clerk and the supervisor buying into a revision.
And the other thought is if paper is what y'all decide on, then Kalkaska County Planning printed almost a wall size. I think I'd say this thing was like all of 6 feet wide. Well, if you've gone over and gotten permits, you know.
Yeah.
Right? I don't know how often they update that. It was an annual thing. I don't know if they still do that or not. But so is that print 6 feet wide?
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
And so we need something like that. If we can't have a zoomable document, I guess. That would show detail
Right.
of that scale.
This should be zoomable here too. You should be able to, we have trouble now because we're using a PDF from
Yeah.
10 years ago.
Right.
It doesn't have the resolution. The map that the county's doing now that you see on the left is high resolution. You can zoom in and you can see the parcels and
Yeah.
you can tell what's zoned what.
And you can do that in
Okay.
PDF, but that's probably what they have. They have a zoomable PDF that they can zoom out to 6 feet and print it.
Most likely, and that's the same, a similar concept
Mhm.
that was used along Skidmore Point Road. Yeah.
So since we're getting into the map, I had listed 3 questions I was hoping to pose to all of the board members because it's things we're wondering.
Rachel, could I interrupt for just? a
Yeah.
second? I'd like to support Ron's idea about not throwing away the legal description part so that it's referenceable. I think it's very important, especially along waterfront properties. Rivers change courses. The waterfront changes. It's a mother nature. It's never always going to be the same. So I think that's a very important thing that we hang on to.
Does the historical stuff never goes anywhere, right? I mean, we're just basically making it would be in the previous amendments. Is that correct?
It'll be a new ordinance that replaces your old one,
So that would truly get,
but you still have it in
Shredded.
archives. You
Yeah.
still have.
oh, it's never
Yeah.
going anywhere.
Yeah.
No, it's not going
Okay,
anywhere.
that's
No,
what I
it'll
want to
always
make
be,
sure.
it'll always
Right.
be available.
So your
As the
questions-
current map will always be available in the.
Archives.
Mhm.
What were you?
Which page are your questions on?
113, sorry. So yeah, you'd have to skip all the way past all the zoning stuff. Yeah, so the first question was, do you know where and or how the current published zoning map originated? And I think you already answered that and said no, right? Is anybody aware?
We think maybe it was generated by a intern some years ago. But, Leslie?
There is no certified
Right.
zoning map in the township, and their bylaw is supposed to be. So I don't know if there was one on the zoning computer. I've never been on that computer, so looking for it.
And I think Ron was the one that had GIS training,
Mhm.
so it's very possible.
That name has come up several times. Yeah.
But I was referencing whether on that computer there was a certified zoning map. I don't know.
Where's that
So
computer?
let me clarify, Ron, something you've said earlier. So you're in favor of having a surveyor double check all of the legal descriptions before a new zoning map is produced?
I would say rather than double check, I would say use the legal descriptions to plot the districts on the map. So what I remember of each zoning district, with the exception of, I think, agricultural, each district has a legal description. So it has a point of a beginning and a point of end. And they're making a polygon of some kind, right? So certain areas like along Lackey Road, some properties might actually be in RC1. Some properties might actually be in agricultural, I think. So that.
Along that area is agricultural.
But
It's actually residential.
some of it is. And so that road, and that's another comment I have, you know, you can't assume that the roads are in the center of the right of way. Matter of fact, we know they're not, okay? So making an assumption like that in the ordinance is automatically setting us to fail. Crisp Road is definitely not, matter of fact, I don't even think it's in the road right of way. So Lackey Road is another one of those things. It cuts across section lines, quarter section, eighth section. So it's angling.
Fine.
So do you know that the descriptions you have are accurate? This is where we get into
I'm not sure I understand that.
so the descriptions that you said you want us to use, do we know that they are accurate?
Well, they're in the ordinance.
Do we know they're accurate?
Have we proved the legal descriptions?
Right.
I don't know that we can do that.
I don't, I think, you know, if you had a surveyor survey what you have, that legal description, then it's just like if you buy a piece of property, you get a legal description, point A to point B, you'll put a pin here and a pin here, and that's where it is. And I think you'd have the same thing. If you had a surveyor go to the marks and use the legal description and take and put that on the map and make the map come to those legal descriptions, then the map would be accurate. Because you're going off the legal descriptions, you have to, I think what you have to do, we don't know what is exactly right, but we have to pick something. And I think the legal descriptions, I think historically, they go back, you know, before the maps. So I would think if you had to pick which one's right, it would be the legal description is properly described. And I think you could prove that by going, you know, we have DNR, we have those blue markers, we have one right up here in the corner. You could measure off point A of that to something else, and that distance should come back up to whatever the legal description is, and that'd prove it.
My
Well, I
only
think
thoughts,
what you do is you have a surveyor follow the legal descriptions, get that on a map, and find out, and then you can compare that, I guess, to the map that's around and see if you have any discrepancies. You might have some, or maybe you get lucky and you don't have any. Maybe that map is accurate, that has been around here forever. But certainly if you have any discrepancies between that map and between the old map and this newly generated map, you're gonna have to, I say you, I don't mean you
Right. I
or
understand.
the planning commission specifically, but those discrepancies will have to be resolved. One way or another to make sure that every little square inch of Whitewater Township is on a map that can be certified as the zoning map of Whitewater Township.
I guess
So-
Randy, a question on this. So most other townships, when they do their zoning maps, don't they base them off the county's map? And
Yes.
they're based off sections that they already have listed.
All the counties produce some kind of a map. It's the equalization department and a GIS department if they have that. And they're producing a map that shows all the parcels. And that's not only important for zoning, it's important for taxation too. The assessors have to use something to know you have a 4.6 acre parcel and the associated legal description for it. So one other point about the changes to the zoning here is that there are probably half dozen or more, maybe more than that, maybe like a dozen or so rezonings that occurred over the years.
Mhm.
So whenever you rezone property, you're changing two things. So I'm wondering out loud whether or not there's going to be some problems with if something was rezoned from one thing to another, it went from one category to one thing. Now what's left? I mean, what
Mhm.
happened to,
And I think that was specifically how I interpreted your question. Not to put words in your mouth, but I understood you to ask, how do you know the legal descriptions were approved? That's what I understood you to ask, and that's a good question. I'm thinking that they came, how many planning commission members have seen the original 1972 zoning ordinance? You've never seen it? Oh. Well, you should start there.
Well, and I don't believe it has a map.
would have legal-
No,
that's
but I
legal.
believe the legal descriptions are coming from that. And so that specifically answers your question. We could compare the 72 document to whatever legal descriptions we have. When we find a variance, to your point, Randy, did an amendment change the legal description, and did it change correctly? And you have a valid point, right? Moving forward, do we keep updating those legal descriptions?
No.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I
Okay.
mean, I'm not sure I would spend money to do that, because I know the map, we can blow up. We can zoom in to parcel detail level. And so if one parcel moves, and we actually have this in the N or commercial district, somebody bought 5 acres behind their building. That's the Pike Place right up here. And I think they're in industrial zone, but the 5 acres they bought was not, but they're using it as an industrial facility. So that's an interesting concept.
And my point was going to what I was talking to Randy about is, I think that, we can split hairs with legal descriptions and that when the legal descriptions are already there from owners. Because every one of these lots have their own legal descriptions.
That's right.
All we have to do is show what's by section, by lot, or however we wanted to divide those zoning areas on a map. We don't have to put legal descriptions already there. And to your point, I think it's very important to have something you can blow up and say, I can look right at that and see that that is R1. And, you are not using it correctly.
Right.
But I think it's going down a rabbit hole when we look at trying to write legal descriptions when they're already there.
Comparing something from 1972
Right.
to what we have now, there's been so many changes in lot sizes, combining of lots, splitting of lots. They're not gonna be the same.
That has nothing to do with the district. The districts have not changed.
Legal description.
No. The districts have their own legal description, okay? The zoning district, I'm not talking about
Right.
parcel description.
But they don't have to. Because we can do it per the legal descriptions of property that's already there.
No, you can't.
I believe that's being done in a lot of places.
Nope.
No?
Well, what is wrong though, if I could ask, with finding a few points on there and just have the surveyor verify these? And then what we do know about our map, that are the boundaries of our township are correct, and we can prove it. Because we just had a surveyor match it to the legal description, so.
Okay.
I guess I don't understand what the downfall to that is.
What I need to know, understand, because I might be confused, is I understand what Al, you're asking for, boundaries of the township, the border of the township.
Mhm.
Ron, are you asking for surveying every corner of every district? Or how are you, that's what you're asking for? No? Okay, then I'm confused.
So. We all agree that this parcel has a legal description to it, right?
Correct.
And that's your point,
My point, yes.
okay? My point is that the districts have their own legal description.
Just pick the red, it's literally.
Yeah, pick the red. So every parcel has their description,
Mhm,
but the district also has its description, starting from a known point.
mhm.
Probably a quarter section or a section line, something like that. And so, for example, there's a prime issue. If we don't describe this, what is that white line?
Railroad easement.
Yes, it is, as a matter of fact, yeah. And so, but we also have a unique thing that happens here, right here, just north of High Prairie Park. There's an easement in there that goes, I think, all the way to the tribal land.
But how are you saying, I guess what I'm hung up on is, how are you gonna prove that? By having a surveyor?
We're not proving. We're not
Okay.
proving.
That maybe I'm getting hung up on that, because that's what Al's saying is proving the boundaries, so maybe,
Verifying it.
okay.
We are creating the map
Mhm.
from the district descriptions that exist. They're already written. And that's supposedly how this map was generated, but we don't know. So I'm saying that we take those legal descriptions on the GIS map that Josh is creating for the township.
Mhm.
Taking Al's idea, you have to pin something on that map. You have to put an electronic pin
Right.
on that map, right?
Yeah, so
But
not
how-
a physical survey stake.
In
You're
my mind,
doing
it's
it on
not
the
physical
GIS.
survey
Okay, that's
stake,
where I'm getting confused.
because-
That's why we're
That's,
getting confused.
yeah, because he's talking about physical pins,
I was
you're talking about,
verifying.
Yeah,
That-
he is.
okay,
And that would be an extra level. But to Randy's point, or in Ardella's point, that could change, right? And I just recounted a use that would require then another survey.
I guess what I'm wondering, and maybe this is a silly question, but if you adopt a new map and you approve it, and this is what it is, even if it changed a foot or 2 feet, does the legal description matter? I mean, if you can zoom right in and you can see down to the foot, does it matter if they're there or not? Because this is what we've approved. Right now, we have nothing. So if we approve something,
So
then all that wipes away all that back. Am I crazy?
Well, my thought,
Practically-
what I wanted to ask you was, so if you say like the red area, it
Mhm.
wants to be whatever you want it to be. Call it R1. And the parcels and the legal descriptions of the parcels that are in R1 is in that district.
Yep.
Then it's already taken care of because all your legal descriptions are already there.
Negative. Because this is an interior lot
Mhm.
that will be described as 4 sides. This is an interior lot that will be described as 4 sides. So you will not have this side described. Or this, or this, or this. You can't add all those together.
No, but if you have a list of, this district is gonna include these parcels. All your legal descriptions are in it.
But he's talking about the fact that each
That,
zoning district has been defined legally. And all we need to do is plot those out, have somebody who knows what they're doing, put that on the map correctly. And then it sounds to me like after that happens, then we need to double check against that map, any rezoning that has happened and add that in if it changed anything. It sounds to me like there's more than one level to bring this all together, but
And
I
that's-
think he's right about there already is a description of each zoning district.
if we keep them that way, what happens if we change it?
Where did the conversation of changing them?
Well, I mean, with the whole, master plan that we're doing, if they talk about rechanging anything, any of the districts, which is a possibility, correct?
Then the map changes at the time it changes.
Go with it.
We don't have
Right.
map to start.
Gotcha.
So going back to what Randy said, once we have the solid map,
Okay,
then I think we kind of walk away from that historical information. Cheryl says it's always going to be stored, right? Because it has happened here. So if for whatever reason, computer crashes and we lose all of our certified electronic maps and we burn all of our printed,
right.
right? We do have that starting point over again. So I kind of agree with Randy that once we use those legal descriptions to define the map and everybody's comfortable with that map as being as accurate as we can make it, then we just kind of move on and just use a map with significant detail to go to parcel level. And if we wanted to say, you know, the parcel number is in this district, we could do that too. But that's gonna be a lot of work to maintain. Maps will be a lot of work to maintain.
So when this is done, you should be able to zoom in and see every little parcel, even a very small one.
Yeah.
You know, so it's,
Which you
But-
can already do on the county GIS.
yes,
Yeah.
right, or, right, you can do that now. What's isn't there is the zoning.
Right,
town.
So-
exactly.
So what Randy's saying is you're just adding a layer with our zoning to
Right.
that already,
right.
yeah.
Right.
Okay,
And
well,
let
that.
the county
would
worry
circle
about the
to
parcels and the
What I thought we were.
legal
doing, so
descriptions.
Good, I think
Okay.
we're all on the same page because I think this is what we kind of went through. Am I?
Yeah, well, one other point is, part of the work here included coming up with the list of amendments, but not only just the numbers and the dates, but a description of all of them. So that we have a description of, like, for example, amendment number
Is this in our packet?
18. I don't think it is, I'm
Okay.
sorry,
Yeah,
but you can,
Hold that up, I think it is. Oh, nope, not that. one,
Yeah,
not that
I don't
one.
remember reading that.
for example, amendment number 18 was changing the RC and N district. So that was passed in 1990. So we have about a dozen of those. At least. All of which need to be checked to make sure that if a parcel was rezoned, we show that on our new map.
Yeah.
There is a rezoning, that actually didn't happen. I researched this for Municode, a couple of years ago now or more. It shows in one of the zoning ordinance amendments. And it was making a parcel down in the RC one somewhere way south, commercial.
Oh.
But that actually did not pass. It didn't go
Okay.
through. It wasn't done. So, there might be some places where we actually have to check the minutes to make sure that, the rezonings actually
Yeah, there's
were
actually a
adopted.
number of amendments that were numbered but then not passed,
Yeah,
whether it's
Yeah.
zonings or text changes.
right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Don't
But,
those
but
tax-
the whole point of this lengthy discussion is to get the zoning, get the legal descriptions out of the zoning ordinance and replaced by a map that is usable to the public.
Yes.
Yes.
And I think we've all agreed, we're just talking, we're getting into the details of how do we prove that this new map is correct? And once we've
Yeah.
done that, then they can be removed from the zoning. Is that
Yep.
Yeah.
consensus? Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Seems right.
Yeah.
And do we have a consensus to do that? Do we have a path now that we want to go down? How we're going to accomplish that? Have we decided that?
I think I understand it as using the legal descriptions, following
Yeah.
that forward
Yeah, okay.
to make sure they match with
Okay.
the GIS
Mhm.
map. Is that
Is that,
correct?
now we're all in agreement with that, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a balance between actually going out and putting a pin in the
Yeah,
ground,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
Because we at least have done our due diligence to draw the correct polygon and color it red according to the description. And if a half a parcel falls in another district, then I think you guys have to look at
Okay, yeah.
some type of zoning district amendment to either exclude or include all of that particular parcel, like the one that's just happened here on M72. That's gonna be a
Okay.
conflict for sure.
Do you have any clarifying questions or anything, or do you understand?
I do. So it sounds like a change order to the purchase order you have with the surveyor to expand that work is in order.
No, we're not saying we're gonna do the actual
No,
pins.
but to plot the legal descriptions that exist in the ordinance now, to plot that.
Oh,
on-
that would be a change.
Yeah,
Cause we
okay.
only asked for N
For the end
district.
district, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just want to be sure.
We only asked for N district.
Yep.
But if that's only if this group agrees with that, right?
Well, yeah, I think we're here to ask you and we want to do what,
Mhm.
you know, you guys have more history than us here, so you know what. If that's what you want to do and you will approve that, then I say we do it. We need to get a map.
We need to make a motion and approve it.
You're looking at me.
looking at-
Know what I'm doing?
I'm not sure if we
A
know
motion to
exactly,
do it, he said.
I'm not sure if we know exactly what that is, yet, do we? I think
Why do
Randy
we
can
have a
probably. fill us in.
certified map, a certifiable map, and we
Yeah.
don't have it.
None of us are
We have,
capable of
this
certifying.
isn't even anything we really need to discuss. We have to get a certifiable map and get it certified.
All right, well, we know.
So it's the first step for us to get a legitimate quote on, you know, how much it is, because you're gonna.
Getting that done?
The PO. I'm sorry. That's okay. We need to get a quotation.
Well,
So
whoever
assess
is
how much
already
is going
working
to
with
cost.
the county can get that.
Okay.
And we have a surveyor, so.
Yeah, I would like to see what our first product turns out like
Okay.
before we go request more.
Okay. Like I said, I checked with him Monday and he said he's not done yet.
Yeah,
Or
So-
maybe the county has a recommendation for this, maybe. I don't know.
Another question is, if we have that description from 1972, and you believe that to be correct, is that something we can give to GIS and they can plot it on our map for us? And then we
So-
don't have to hire somebody to do that.
we tried that.
Yeah, I would suggest you want a registered surveyor to do that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think Kim and I took that idea to GIS, and unfortunately, I think it was with the N district. And it's a complicated legal description,
Okay.
and I think Josh went, no. And so I think we probably burned them out from doing that. And I kind of concur with Randy. I think I would like to have somebody licensed to draw that polygon for the first time. And then we just include it with Josh's layers. And I think that's what you're saying,
It
too,
is.
right, Randy?
It is. I would recommend you have a registered surveyor do it.
I know it's
I
gonna be
agree.
expensive,
Mhm.
but
It'll be right though.
Right.
it'll be
We-
right.
We have somebody who knows what they're doing the job.
Let's get it right.
Mhm.
the first
Would-
time.
Should we have some verbiage and make a motion and approve that? Do we need to?
I think we should. I don't know if it there's no harm in doing that,
No.
right? I mean, this is your approval. You'd have to approve this, right? As a board?
Well,
Or is there any-
I think we're too early.
I don't think we
Okay.
have
A
that
motion, quite
allowed
honestly,
Okay.
because,
We don't have any money.
well, what happens if the product that does get returned from Geomatics isn't what we expected, right?
So we would look at like maybe, hopefully we have something, our January meeting, we'd make our decisions and recommend it to you to your February meeting? Or is it something that you can just do because you already have a contract with this? I guess I don't know what order of operations to do this in.
Well, I don't see a reason for the board to be involved. In you guys making up the map.
And I think one thing we was wondering, Ron, was,
It's going to be an expensive process.
There's just money involved here.
well, one thing we was wondering,
Know about how much that's gonna be before we
Yeah,
go.
So we need to bring something to
would
you.
we have had the
Yeah.
board's approval to try to straighten this out? It sounds like there's certainly willingness to do this.
Mhm.
So I think we have that now. And like
Yeah.
Cheryl said, a price, an estimated
Yeah.
cost.
And I see Cheryl's point too, so there probably is a cost item that comes back to the board for a purchase order or an updated purchase order. But I really wanna see what Scott returns as a product. Aren't you interested
Yeah,
in
it's,
that?
well,
first?
it's been a month, I think. 3 weeks.
Yeah, but I didn't expect that you were gonna give him all the amendments and have him search through the amendments to flush out
Oh.
the changes in the legal.
Well,
So I thought that was on us, quite
well,
honestly.
yeah, well, we gave them the amendments, the industrial amendments, but because that's, if it changed from the original, then we gotta know that.
Yeah, but I thought we were gonna give him the legal descriptions in one format.
Oh.
Not 7 documents that he had to search through, and then how does he even prioritize them? Which came first, chicken or the egg?
Well, by the amendment number.
Yeah, okay, so you know that.
Oh.
Do you know how a surveyor starts his survey?
No, I don't,
Okay.
I don't call them head of surveyors. They're a strange bunch in my mind, but.
I think we need to move on. We're getting
Yeah.
bogged down in this, and I think we need more information about how much it's gonna cost to get this surveyor, to get, a map, a certifiable map. I think we don't have enough information to.
Okay. Good idea. I agree. So I'm gonna. Because of the time. You have pages 66 through 112, which are the zoning project updates. If you have something glaring or big that we all need to talk about, if you could mention, bring it up now, but if you have a lot of notes, then we would like to see those and,
I'll supply them.
Okay.
That would be best,
yeah,
because there isn't a page without 5 notes.
okay. All right, good. I mean, it's what we need is the
Yeah.
feedback.
Yeah, what we're looking for.
Yep. Don, do you have anything glaring or
Just send
something you
them to
want
who?
What's that?
Just send them to who?
You can send them to me and
Okay.
I'll get them in our January packet for everybody to see all of your comments and us to
Okay.
review. Cheryl, did you have anything glaring or do you want to submit something?
I breezed through that. I wasn't gonna read it word for word. It's proposed language and I don't have anything.
Okay, how about you, Ardella? Yeah,
In the future, if you could provide us with a live document that we can actually comment on instead of putting our little comment balloons. So,
it's
For
because I
example-
did the packet, because it's a PDF, or how do you mean?
well, for example, in the zoning, in the working document,
The one with the markups?
yep, Randy made comments, so it's RM comment 1, RM comment 2, right? It would be nice to have that document sent to us so we can put our comments on. Right? So what you will receive from me is a PDF document that's got a bunch of yellow balloons on it. Whereas the comments that Randy made, if we had an interactive copy, all of our comments would follow right underneath Randy's. And they would appear in different colors. And so, you know, Cheryl might make a comment that appears in red or blue. Ardella might make one that's
So,
pink.
hold on, are you talking about, it would be like a shared document, because otherwise we still have 4 different versions coming back.
You would-
4 different, unless everybody was on the same exact, like Google Doc, for instance, there would be no way to differentiate whose comments are who, right?
Other than color
Other
coding,
than color coding.
You know,
that's what Ron was talking.
in. if
Well,
we-
you can always use the comment, you can always use the comment feature under tools and click on text and actually type words, and I don't use the balloons anymore. I actually type the text into the document, so you don't have to click on balloons.
That's
If
what
I
I did
have
it on the
notes I want
documents
in a
there.
document.
I think it's simpler myself, but
What document are you using this with? Is it Word or?
Word.
There's a
2019.
there's a checkout feature, right?
2019, what checkout feature?
Yeah, where you can make a document shared, but you have to check it out. So like if Ron checks it out, then somebody else can't check it
Okay.
out until Ron saves that back.
Yep.
So you don't have
Oh, that's a
4
good
different
point.
versions. You get
Okay.
one version that has everybody in it.
Okay. Maybe you can show me how to do that. 'cause
Why
I
don't we just have each person that is wants to comment on it?
Yeah.
Send them all to Rachel and they can look at them, go through the separate documents instead of circulating one document. I mean, that's gonna be a cluttered mess.
so
With everybody commenting
It's
and-
4 versions of
Yes.
100 pages. No,
Yes, it
well, I
is.
get it.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it
And-
We'll get
really-
through it though.
it
We're
doesn't matter.
here to, or we'll just get our outreach committee to help us.
Yep.
I also provide another clarification on this. So what I'm starting with is there was a printed version of the zoning ordinance given to me and the planning commission members. Along with that, there was another binder with zoning amendments given to me and planning commission members. The zoning amendment book was somewhat incomplete. There were a few amendments in there that were wrong, at least in my copy, and a number of them that were missing. So I have filled that in with information that I got from the clerk. Then we also have the Muni Code document. So what I'm starting with is the printed version that the planning commission got. And as my starting point. So just so you know how this is working. And then if there are amendments, I'm putting that amendment in there. If there are something from Unicode, I'm putting that in, trying to pull that all together. So understand that it's not easy to do a red line version of this because I don't have one document that we all agree is a zoning ordinance. We also have the online version. That was on, I don't know if it's still on the township website or not, but so just appreciate that that complexity of this. But as we're trying to do is trying to show, you know, where all the sections are, where all the materials coming from, and err on the side of not changing things, just getting it clarified and reorganized.
Yep.
Okay. So make
Um,
sure.
Then could I just ask that you guys send those to me maybe by next Friday, the 22nd, so I can make sure I get them in our packet for January? Because of Christmas and everything. I'm not really sure exactly what day I'll do the packet, but if I had it by Friday, the 22nd, that would be helpful.
If you just want to handwrite them too, we'll take that, I would think.
Yeah.
Or whatever's easiest.
Whatever you want. Okay, thank you for,
I'm just gonna share my entire file, so you'll have access to it. It'll be unlocked. And
Okay.
so you can either manipulate the balloons all into one printed page. So you know how to do that or
I'll
not?
figure it out. No.
Okay, so I can help with that.
Okay,
So all of the comments that appear on one page, it prints the PDF page, and then all of the comments are printed on the very next page.
oh, so it doesn't take them from the whole document, just each page?
Each page
Okay.
prints them page
Oh.
by page by page.
Yikes,
And so-
okay. It's a lot of pages.
It'll be a lot of pages, but it might be easier to track them that way.
True.
So I'll leave a raw document and you can change it however you want to change it.
Appreciate
And if you
that.
need help,
I'll reach out.
sounds like you're pretty familiar with it too. So
Mhm.
that's cool.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so anything else, Randy, on the zoning that you need to? Okay, then I'm gonna move us into the budget. So for 23-24, everything's on track. Not foreseeing any issues. We did have several questions. This is page 114 of the packet. That we wanted to have answered if we may. So we'll start with number 1. Too bad. Okay, so ideally and realistically, what would be a good date?
So I will start the budget by the second week of January. But that means really just getting, and this is gonna answer number 2 for
Okay.
you as well. Cheryl will provide me with an Excel sheet of something you see in our packet.
Mhm.
Or something similar that you see in our packet. It will almost look identical to the budget document that we used in our 3/21/2023 meeting. She'll give that to me in Excel.
3/21/23.
I think that was our budget public hearing.
Yeah.
Okay, I can
Okay.
find that easy,
Yep.
yeah.
So that's what it will look like, but it will be in Excel format. And
Okay.
so I would recommend that as your base format. You'll all be able to put in whatever numbers you want to put in. And at the board level, we are all familiar with that chart of accounts. We don't expect you to be, but I'll be more than happy to sit down with the group. And
Okay, I think we can manage that document, but what I would wanna know is separate of that, because that's gonna be totals. Virtually like line item totals.
Mhm.
So do you want it broke down for meeting numbers? What types of meetings? Do you want that like on a separate page that kind of goes into more depth? And if so, how deep do you want that?
so during our budget discussions, we will actually have those notations in our Excel spreadsheet.
Okay,
In other words, we plan on 18 PC meetings. Okay,
okay,
and then we figure on 18 recording secretary meetings. And we assign a dollar amount to that. 18 has been the number historically that we've used. It worked in the past, it didn't work this past year, but so we do go to that detail. And Cheryl, for example, will on the actual budget document, she'll make notations about transfers of money. So the board agreed that we were going to transfer $10 from the general fund to Park and Recs. And that money will be used for . So we do go into some detail. For example, under professional services, you guys might think you need to have another public charrette, for example. And so there you might include another LEA contract. You might include other expenses that you incurred for the public charrette.
What was the date they needed to have the budget to you by?
Well, as early as possible, right? But we really won't start meeting until probably February, first week in February.
okay, so I did plan to put it on our January agenda,
Yeah.
so we would break down meetings and talk about some of the details. We could get you some dollar figures and details. Probably within a couple weeks of, I mean, however long it takes me to type it back up and send it to you after the meeting.
Yeah, and if you want me to be present in case you have any questions about detail,
Mhm.
I can share what we've done at the board in the past.
Okay,
Quick
And it doesn't
question.
mean that we have to do it that way,
Right.
right? It doesn't mean that. If somebody has a better idea, I'm sure we're open
well,
to
I
it.
think being consistent with what you're used to and matching what else is in your packet is gonna be useful, so we'd like to give.
Rachel,
you-
I think really it's boils down to a show your work thing. So if you've got, like for the salaries, under, that's for the planning commission members. So you're just gonna take your number of meetings. How many meetings are you, meetings and subcommittee meetings?
Yeah.
Regular meetings, special meetings and subcommittee meetings.
Mhm.
What's the total on that? Maybe how it's broken down, by the cost per meeting. I can get you that if you need the wage figures for that.
That'd be great.
And, just basically showing your work for each line item that, I mean, if you're, got some mailings or something, okay, well, we're gonna do 3 mailings to 1,500 addresses each time, and this is how, well, the postal rate's going up January 1st, I think, so. Just forecasting those things for each, professional services.
For each line item.
Yeah, for each line item, just kind of showing your work.
Okay, that's what I thought. So
Yeah.
Just have a quick question on the
Go
budget. The, what we just talked about, hiring somebody maybe to do the legal work. Is that something that we could put in for next year's budget? What would be April 1st? Is that when the next year's budget goes?
well,
Is
yeah, that
timing
before,
wise?
before that question, I was gonna ask whose budget does that come out of? For the zoning map stuff in the survey, is that a PC budget line item or is that, where does that come out of?
I think it's come out of the
Miscellaneous?
planning commission budget.
You think it would be the
Yeah, I
planning
think
commission?
it'd be
Okay,
something
because
out of the
we're
planning
working on the
commission.
map and asking for it
Yeah,
for our map.
yeah,
Okay, that
right,
makes
yeah.
sense. I just wanted to make
So
sure.
timing wise is us planning for that in next year's budget, starting in April. Is that good timing or is this something you're gonna think we're gonna need before then?
Sure, I understand the question there.
Hiring somebody, a surveyor to check the survey, legal descriptions.
You may want to do an RFP for something like that.
Correct, but I'm talking about timing wise as far as budgeting. So would we try to ask for that money before next year's budget or can we ask for it in next year's budget? Which would be in April.
When are
I
we
think
gonna
we
get
could get
to it, is
that,
what you're asking?
Yes,
could probably get that started yet this year, this fiscal year. I don't think that would take that long to get that out there, but I guess we want to wait and see what we get back from Scott too.
Well, the end district was $250.
Oh,
So I
okay.
mean,
Okay, but we've just amplified the complexity by adding all the districts in there.
Mhm.
A lot.
so how many districts do we have?
What? 12,
$3,000.
but.
It doesn't.
But
sound
that's
like
not a
that much,
surveyor,
actually.
right? You're
there's-
talking about.
But there's overlap
surveyor's gonna
between
cost
that.
more, or
so-
did you already hire a surveyor for that one?
Well, yeah, we
But
reached
they're
out
doing it electronically.
to the
We're talking
last
about having it-
person who did survey work in the township.
I see, okay.
So I assumed that they were familiar with, the points of beginning in the township.
Mhm.
sorry, I didn't mean to get in all that. Really the question was is, can you wait until? Do you need that information before April 1st or before April?
We can continue working on the zoning ordinance, assuming that the map is going to be fixed when we get to the end of that, because I think the zoning ordinance certainly won't be done in this fiscal year.
Right. Okay.
It'll be going to next year, so you could probably put it into
I
next
had a
year.
question, Randy. There's really no reason to wait. We can do two.
No,
things
right,
at
you can do
once.
it
So
now.
If we do need a budget approval, say for $2,000, we may think, then let's get that done so that we are working on two things at once. We can
Yeah.
do that.
Please, this is a surveyor that's doing it. We're not,
Yeah.
we're just waiting for him to finish it and get it
Mhm.
to us.
Okay.
Okay, then Cheryl,
So-
can you send me, by next Friday to the most updated
Budget?
yeah,
Okay.
okay,
So get a budget request in this year,
if we,
That's a
yeah.
good point. Yeah, if we need, we can request. if we
start
need.
that work.
Gonna come up with the figure out how to get it. You gonna do that, Randy?
I think we'll work on that the next PC meeting.
Yeah, well, that'll be we're waiting to see what we get produced here, right, before we decide. Okay,
Right
And-
on packet page 114.
Yeah.
3B as in boy.
uh-huh,
Example, should we break down our anticipated needs by project Master plan, I assume.
Yep, or zoning project.
Oh, zoning project. Okay,
Yep.
all right. I wasn't sure what that acronym.
And I
meant.
think the answer is yes, it needs to be broke down. Like
Yeah,
on the
yeah.
Excel document, it's pretty totaled, but then we will give you something that breaks it down by project.
I just wasn't aware of what ZP meant.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's, yeah, our little short abbreviation, yeah. Okay, well, I feel better about what to provide you, and I may, reach out for help, but we'll try with mid-January to get you something at least. And then if it's not what you like, let me know and we'll get you what's helpful and we'll work together to get it for you.
Well, under number 4,
Okay,
okay?
yeah,
My comment is let's start with 1 page. And you guys do what you think you're gonna do as far as whatever work you want to show, and then just provide that as an incremental step. Hey, this is the direction we're heading. Is this what you guys normally do? Rather than the whole budget, right?
okay. But we only meet once a month, so we're gonna have to hammer out our numbers and what we're expecting in January anyway. So if we have it,
Okay.
but I'll just, I'm not gonna give you a book. Nobody wants to read a book. I'll try to keep it overview and then a little bit broken down.
Sure.
Okay. If I'm understanding right, what you'd prefer.
Sounds like you want the breakdown on the Excel sheet. Is that correct?
Okay, Linda's gonna help me with this. Please, I hope you will. She's good at that stuff, so. Okay,
We'll also get the books out of your office in January. I just wrote it on.
oh, I
I'm
forgot
sorry,
all
I'm
about-
bringing those out tonight.
I totally forgot about that. I totally. I didn't-
Everybody's going home with a present tonight.
I forgot all about it. I'm sorry, Ron, because I said I
No
would take
worries.
care of it and I just now remembered.
No worries.
Okay, so then are we good on budget? We can move on to MPO. Page 115 is when it starts. It's the last item. What's everybody's thoughts? You saw what we wrote and that we're approved, we like it. Where are you guys at with it? We think it's a no-brainer to have a seat at the table.
I'm gonna jump into this one a little bit because I attended the January 11th. The MTA luncheon had representatives there, specifically Hannah York, who was a planner with Networks Northwest. And the topic wasn't the MPO. And at that time, it was the fact that Garfield Township had now reached a census of 50,000. And under the state law, they're required now to be part of an MPO. The notes and things, the advantage of that MPO was that there's eligible for additional federal funding because the population level has gone up. But retrospect of that, there's always going to be a 20% matching grant. And the whole conversation in there boiled down. It was a great presentation. And the whole conversation boiled down that basically the focus is on the MPO areas. Yeah, I understand there's the urbanized area, but the focus is in this case, Garfield Township, Traverse City. And your participation, a township's participation in there doesn't necessarily yield any direct benefit. You're going to be paying dues on an ongoing basis because it's an open agreement. There is a 1-year plan, a 4-year plan, and a 20-year plan. And so, so Networks Northwest is creating a bureaucratic agency to manage this MPO. They have staff, they're going to be paid, but they don't have engineers, they don't have grant writers, they don't have a staff of people. So let's just say the board, this consortium decides that they're going to do a project. And so now they have to go out and outsource all of this prep work. And let's say that prep work turns out to be $60,000. that $60,000 is divided back equally to each of these members. It is not whether one shovel goes in ground in Whitewater Township or the entire project is in Garfield Township, we're paying a share. And furthermore, it didn't come up at the meeting, it came up after the fact in conversation with other township officials there, that if there's let's say it's a $5 million project, there's a 20% matching grant. Okay, who's funding that 20%? And the question never got answered of, is that now a shared, because you're now in this defined area, you're now part of this group. And by being part of this group, you are sharing all these costs. And so I read through the agreement, I see the area, talking about the shared part of it. But there's a major issue here that I don't think is answered, which is what happens to the 20% match? Now, the dues for this year look great. They're just getting started, $3,800. But what's next year? What is that grant on an ongoing basis? The dollar amount for Whitewater Township. I'm not dismissing an MPO. I think there's lots of benefits to them, but it's a resource allocation challenge and financial obligations that I just do not believe are clear in this document. And I'm basing this on a firsthand meeting back in January. My notes were not overwhelmingly accurate because once they said, you're not going to see any of this money. We gotta form this group, but you're not going to get a. So I kind of stopped writing. Yeah. I probably went back and finished my Coke or taco bar or whatever it was but the bottom line is that there was not. And so I was really surprised to see that document in front of us. And I will also say, and I think it was at the LEA, when you came in front of us and talked about the LEA funding. And I vividly recall, I'm not going to say who I believe said it, because that I'm not 100% on. But I also recall in that conversation that the Planning Commission representative said, we will never do anything with Networks Northwest based on their performance and their responsiveness to a simple survey project. And it just struck me as odd that here we are going to just open up a checkbook with them, that we don't have answers on how all that stuff, all those expenses are managed. So I have some tremendous. Yeah, I've got some tremendous.
You could be paying for stuff that's not even beneficial for you.
And it's all federal funding. And so the only two possible avenues that we would have anything in here is any federal roads. It's our township has.
So
go, please go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, I know. I got
The
kind of
first 1.3 miles north of Supply Road on Williamsburg Road.
Oh, okay,
That's actually for unknown reasons. That's actually designated a federal road. And there's also,
Section of it?
Yeah.
just the
it's like
first
a
1.3 miles of it
1.3.
is federal funding. And Supply Road is something similar. It's only got a certain section that qualifies for federal grants, and I could not understand the.
I don't understand the value. I just don't. I
didn't at first either, and also had the Networks Northwest concern that cropped in my head. I mean, obviously it was difficult. So I'm wondering, I want to hear what other people have to say too, but I am wondering if it's worth having them back to a board meeting to answer these questions and to talk about it more, or you just know?
I'm open to hearing anything, but we have so limited of a road that would actually ever even qualify if we ever needed it. It just makes no sense to me for us to be part of this consortium. When we have in our own backyard, if we're going to deal with road issues and funding, we should be working on our own backyard. It's just so, I'm never going to say it's a hard no, because like I said, I could have easily misinterpreted something and would but even if that comes, it's going to be a hard convince for me that there's benefit to Whitewater Township to be part of this.
You want to say something, Randy?
It's appropriate. I'll chime in here for a little bit. I do have some background in this. About 30 years ago, I was the planning director for a county east of Columbus, Ohio. And they had the same situation where the population threshold reached the point where they could be an MPO. And so that whole process was just beginning at the time that I was actually leaving there. But I can tell you from experience that what you're really buying, I believe, is a seat at the table to help determine the priorities of how federal funding is going to be distributed within Grand Traverse County. And I would also add that M72 is also part of that equation. So how that improvements get made on M72 is part of that. And so I think in my mind, it's worth it, and maybe worth having some more conversation with Networks Northwest about that. I know that their plans are to include additional funding for them to have sufficient staff to deal with planning and in some cases engineering of issues, so.
So I'm going to
See it?
speak directly to your comments if you're done.
I am.
MDOT provides that planning to us free of charge. All we got to do is to go to their every 5-year meetings. So
Well,
nix that.
that changes
And
though in
this
the MPO.
agreement says specifically the dollars are for Garfield Township and Traverse City. It doesn't even address the urbanized areas. And as you can see on packet page 129, Whitewater Township doesn't even have any urbanized areas. So
It's part of the MPO and part of the area where federal funds would be redirected, so.
and I would like them to spell Whitewater correctly.
Go
So
ahead, Cheryl.
Well, I would just say that I thank the planning commission for inviting Rob Carson out to explain the Metropolitan Planning Organization, because I don't think the board or the planning commission really had any idea what this was all about. And I know his presentation was very enlightening to me. I do look at the other municipalities that are in it, and I think, gee, we would be a small fish at the table. You know, so in that respect, but we are forecasted to have, and the reason why Rob Carson is making this presentation to all the townships around is because many of them are forecasted to have urbanized areas, including Whitewater, by the next census. And so we are, you know, it would be nice to have a seat at the table. I think maybe I would like to, you know, I think if I had to vote on it right today, I think I actually would vote no, because I think maybe we're just a little premature to get in on that discussion. But I think within 5 or 7 years, we're probably going to want a seat at that table, whoever is on the board at that time. So, you know, this area is just, and that was one of the things that Rob Carson stressed, is how much, as Randy stated earlier, this area of the state is growing by leaps and bounds. I look at the vacant land that's for sale in Whitewater Township right now today. There's a lot of vacant land for sale in Whitewater Township. That's going to be sold. People are going to want to be bringing developments in here. And so, you know, we're going to get bigger, and we are, you know, like I say, they've got all the tools to map out these, you know, forecast these urbanized areas. But I think maybe today my vote would be no, just because I think we're not quite there yet. But I do think what they're doing is, you know, they're trying to plan regionally for road improvements and stuff like that. And we need a lot of road improvements really in the Traverse City area to move the ever-growing amount of traffic in Traverse City. They're trying to deal with that now, but it's a major problem.
And what we have out here too, you have to remember is that, as far as roads, you know, we've only got, I guess, two ways, but one's a very lengthy way, but we only have really one way to have our emergency services ambulance take people over to Munson. And that concerns me greatly, that the road system in Traverse City is not up to snuff for the people on this side of town to access services on the other side of town. And I get it, you know, you talk about what roads are eligible for this type of funding and stuff like that. But as that area grows, I think there's gonna be other roads in their system that are gonna be eligible for this type of funding. So.
Thank you. Ardella?
Cheryl has a lot of good points. But Don, when you talk about 20% matching, and we have no idea what we're gonna be matching, we're just signing on for it, that is a concern for me. I think to the 5 townships that signed on to that sewer system in Grand Traverse County, and then it failed. And they were on the hook for all that money. And that just makes me worry. And like Ron said, we're paying for everything in Traverse City. That's an expensive endeavor to have a seat at the table at this point.
But remember, all of our sewage hauling rates went up drastically
Yeah.
to help pay for the septic plant. So I don't care how you pay for it, but you're gonna wind up paying for it.
Eddie, what's your thought? You refrained from making comments so you could answer tonight.
No, I made a comment already on that appeal when we had the meeting. It's a good idea with an expensive checkbook, in my opinion. That's all when he was finished with the presentation, that's all you were getting for your money was a seat at the table. Now, what's that seat gonna get us? Right now, maybe not enough to sit in the seat yet. But the thing that bothers me is knowing that is Acme sitting at the table by any chance?
Mhm.
Okay. Now it really bothers me more because of the sewage, where the sewage is getting all hooked up. I don't wanna have to pay for something that isn't beneficial for us. So how beneficial is the seat at the table? Are we gonna reach a return now? Okay, if you don't get at the table, do you jump in the table in 5 years? Will you still have that option? That option was not really brought to the table, whether you could jump in and out. In other words, can you define, in other words, I don't wanna sit now, but I wanna sit 5 years down the road. Are you gonna still have that option? That's the only question that was never answered was, can you sit at the table? Can you refuse the seat now and jump in later?
I thought he said you could, but I could be,
Or I remember did say you could leave anytime.
yeah,
Leave
maybe
that
that's.
time
maybe
you wanted,
say you
but
could jump
you
in
didn't
it.
say you could jump in anytime you wanted. So that
Well,
was,
You know,
According to the
maybe,
agreement, you can.
you can jump in
It's
anytime.
bi-directional. Yeah, according to the.
Uh,
And Acme Township is in the agreement.
Yeah.
The going back in, I think it has to be board approved. This board
Yes.
has to approve coming back in. It's not just it's not just your want. The board has to vote to
Approve you
take you,
in to
approve you
begin.
back in.
So if you look at packet page 139, last packet page. You're gonna see TC Talus. That was the predecessor to this, right? We didn't belong to that one either.
No.
So, or if we did, it was
Yeah,
really short-lived.
There was a thing there because we opted out of that.
Yeah.
The township was a member of TC
Yeah.
Talus.
And I
Yeah.
remember going to the meeting.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say it was short-lived anyway. And that,
Cause it wasn't giving you any benefits?
correct. And that body ended up breaking up because the members themselves were upset with one another. And so this is just a repeat of TC Tallis. The same players are there. Matter of fact, Grand Traverse County Road Commission almost didn't sign on because they only got one vote at the table. And they felt they needed more. So,
It sounds like there's a consensus to, right now, the answer is no. And not interested in joining it.
I hear that for sure. I'm wondering if down the road, you're coming into budget, it's gonna be busy. But is there harm in maybe having him attend, in the next few months or year, a board meeting to answer some of these questions? Because I heard a lot of questions, a lot of unknowns, a lot of uncertainties.
I have
mean-
no desire to spend my valuable time on something that is so unimportant to us
Okay,
when we have so many important things to do in the township. That's my feeling as a board member. So please,
Yeah, my core issue is I just don't feel like there's any value in paying at the Seaford table. I have other questions, but they're secondary. That it's just, it's not there. The value's not there.
okay. That answers that. Anything else on MPO from anyone? Anything else related to the planning commission? I don't have anything. Does the board have anything for us? Questions for us? Comments?
Put the books on the list. That has to be.
We're gonna get them before we leave. You can't leave without your book.
no, I was just.
No, we're gonna bring it into January, cause you have to add the incomplete page. We have a little job.
Okay,
Put it on the to-do list, please.
Should we adjourn? Oh, we're not.
well,
there
I
yet.
have to do public comment. So our next meeting is obviously January 3rd. Now I'll open it up for public comment and I'll go to Zoom first.
There's no hands up.
5,
We're gonna get out of it.
3, 2, 1. Closed. All right. With, let's adjourn this meeting at 9:30 PM. Thank you guys for coming. Happy holidays.
Thank you, Rick.
Oh.
Appreciate it.